Hi, and thank you for visiting my channel. For more information, kindly subscribe and follow. Now let's get started. Paul Heyman is yet to make his presence felt on SmackDown since the emphatic return of Roman Reigns. The original Tribal Chief shocked many with his return at SummerSlam, but was swiftly dealt with by Solo Sikoa and the new bloodline in just 2 weeks. All this went down in the wise man's absence. But perhaps that is because he is making preparations. And these preparations could involve him using a 5-time champion to convince Jey Uso to reunite with his cousin. The 5-time champion in question here is Rhea Ripley. If it wasn't obvious after last night's episode of Raw, the Eradicator and the main event share a strong bond. Now, whether it is romantic or just platonic remains to be seen, but the connection is there. So, Paul Heyman could use this to his advantage as he plots to give Roman Reigns all the firepower he needs to challenge the new bloodline. Paul Heyman is nothing if not a wordsmith. Time and time again, he has used his eloquence to get out of a sticky situation. With that in mind, he might try and speak to Rhea Ripley and touch upon her recent issues with her former family, the Judgment Day. Drawing similarities between her situation and Jey Uso's own with the bloodline, he may convince her to convince him to help bring order to his family. Granted, Rhea Ripley isn't one to fall for such things easily, but it might just work. That being said, this is nothing more than speculation. Only time will tell how things unfold. Paul Heyman claims he will return to TV only when he can add to Roman Reigns. Since Roman Reigns made his return, fans have been waiting for him to walk in with the wise man, Paul Heyman, by his side. Unfortunately, in the 2 appearances Reigns made following SummerSlam, Heyman was nowhere to be seen. So, when will he return? Well, the Hall of Famer answered that question himself a while ago. As one of the special guests at Fanatics Fest NYC, Heyman answered a number of questions, many of which had to do with his tribal chief. However, when asked about his own return, the 58-year-old made one thing clear. He will return only when he can truly help Roman Reigns, rather than just ride his coattails to glory and success. Heyman returning to stand side by side with Reigns is inevitable. But, as he said, it would be better both for him and the original tribal chief if he returns when he can be of use. So now, it's only a matter of when and where. The tension was palpable in the room as Paul Heyman sat behind his desk, fingers steepled, deep in thought. The wisest minds in wrestling knew that to be in Paul Heyman's presence meant you were either about to be elevated to new heights or led into a trap. But this time, it wasn't just a career on the line, it was the future of the bloodline, the most dominant faction in WWE history. Jey Uso, the main event, had walked away from his cousin Roman Reigns after years of manipulation and torment. It was a dramatic moment that had shaken the very foundation of the bloodline. The idea of Jey returning seemed impossible unless Heyman could find the right leverage. Heyman needed a masterstroke, a weapon that would make Jey Uso reconsider everything he believed in. The answer came to him in the form of a 5-time champion. A wrestler who was not only respected by his peers, but had a deep history with both Jey Uso and Roman Reigns. This man was none other than Seth Rollins, the Visionary, a name that sent chills down the spines of those who underestimated him. The pitch, Rollins as the catalyst. Heyman didn't waste any time. He reached out to Rollins, explaining his vision. The Visionary was intrigued. He knew the power dynamics within the bloodline and the deep-seated resentment that Jey had for Roman. But he also knew something Heyman did as well. Deep down, Jey Uso craved respect, acknowledgement, and above all, family. Rollins had been both an ally and an adversary to Roman Reigns, and their battles had been legendary. Yet, Rollins also had a history with Jey Uso, dating back to their days battling for the tag team titles. The Visionary understood Jey's struggles, the feeling of being overshadowed, and the need to break free. But Rollins had learned to navigate those waters, carving out a legacy independent of his former Shield brothers. This, Heyman argued, made him the perfect person to speak to Jey. Rollins wasn't just going to convince Jey to return to the bloodline, he was going to show him a path to a new kind of respect, a path where Jey could stand as Roman's equal, not his subordinate. A calculated encounter. The meeting was arranged in secret, far from the prying eyes of the WWE Universe. The location was a dimly lit room, a space that felt more like a battleground than a negotiation table. Jey Uso entered cautiously, his eyes narrowing as he saw Heyman sitting calmly, with Seth Rollins standing beside him. "Jey," Rollins began, his voice low and measured, "I know what you're thinking. You're done with the bloodline, done with Roman. But what if I told you that walking away isn't the answer?" Jey's expression hardened. "I've had enough of being Roman's puppet. I'm my own man now, and I don't need any of you to tell me that." Rollins nodded, understanding the fire behind Jey's words. "You're right. You are your own man, and that's exactly why you need to go back. But not as Roman's lackey, as his equal." Heyman, ever the strategist, chimed in. "Jey, think about it. Roman respects power, strength. What if you could come back on your terms, with Seth's support? Not as someone under Roman, but as someone beside him." Jey scoffed. "And why would Roman ever agree to that?" Rollins smiled, a sly grin that spoke of countless battles won and lost. "Because I'll make him. Roman knows what I'm capable of, and if he wants to keep his empire intact, he'll listen. But he won't just listen to me, he'll listen to you, Jey. Because you'll have the power to demand it." The psychology behind the offer. Rollins wasn't just playing on Jey's desire for respect, he was appealing to something deeper, the idea of family. Despite all the pain and manipulation, the bloodline was still Jey's family. Walking away from Roman meant walking away from everything he had known, everything he had fought for. Rollins offered a way to return, but not as a defeated soldier. Jey could return as a conquering hero, the man who stood up to Roman and won his respect. Heyman knew this was the only card left to play. Roman's paranoia was growing, and the cracks in the bloodline were widening. If Jey could be brought back into the fold, it would not only stabilize the faction but potentially lead to a new era, an era where the bloodline wasn't just Roman's empire, but Jey's as well. The chances of success, the odds of Jey accepting the offer were uncertain. On one hand, the allure of finally getting the respect he deserved was powerful. On the other, the wounds Roman had inflicted on him ran deep. But Heyman and Rollins both understood that Jey wasn't just driven by anger, he was driven by a desire to prove himself, to show the world that he was more than just Roman's lackey. Rollins had always been a master manipulator, and Heyman's track record spoke for itself. Together, they were a formidable team. If anyone could convince Jey to return, it was them. But there were no guarantees in this game, and they both knew it. Jey's final decision would depend on one thing: whether he believed that returning to the bloodline could finally give him the one thing he had always wanted, acknowledgement on his own terms. Conclusion: the waiting game. As Jey left the meeting, his mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Heyman and Rollins had given him much to think about. The decision was his alone, but the consequences would ripple across the entire WWE landscape. Heyman and Rollins exchanged a look as the door closed behind Jey. The seed had been planted, but whether it would grow was anyone's guess. For now, all they could do was wait. In the world of WWE, where alliances are fragile and betrayals are common, the question remained: would Jey Uso reunite with Roman Reigns? And if he did, would it be as a brother or as a rival? Only time would tell.